start with an opening statement and follow questions.
Well, welcome everybody here. New week, definitely a great opportunity for us to go out and respond from last week's game. I want to first start off, I mentioned this yesterday, but our profession, our world lost a great man earlier this week. Sean Clark was a really good friend of mine, was really good to me. When I was in West Virginia, he was from West Virginia. We battled each other even before we got into the conference. Really was a good mentor of mine of just, the conference and the lay of the land. Always had a smile on his face, his wife, his kids. Our condolences go out to him, his family, the App State former players and their family, current family there now, the Central Florida family and players. It's a tragic situation, and we definitely send our prayers from our university and our community and our family. He was a good one. He was a good one. So he's going to be missed, and hopefully we can remember the good times and the big old smile he used to have on his face all the time. So obviously a great opportunity for us to go out and respond this week. Feel really good about our players' response. Probably had the best Monday practice we've ever had. That's a start, right? You got to string it together and you got to carry it to the arena. But definitely had the right mentality. Our players responded the right way. Our coaches responded the right way. No one was satisfied, happy with the result. But it was a great learning lesson. Obviously, a tremendous challenge coming up this week with Jacksonville State coming in. The defending Conference USA champions, I believe. Obviously, they have a championship DNA in their locker room and in their team. A lot of respect for their coaching staff, a lot of guys on that staff. I have a long relationship with the head coach, Charles Kelly, and I worked together, won a national championship together at the University of Alabama. Brian Williams, the defensive coordinator, and I have known each other for a while. Really good, innovative mind. On the defensive side of the ball, Clint Trickett, phenomenal, innovative offensive mind, sees the game from a quarterback perspective. He and I worked together at the other place, did a phenomenal job there for us. And then his dad, Rick Trickett, arguably the best O-line coach in my lifetime for sure. He's been doing it at a really high level for a long time. You can tell by the way his players play. The edge, the fundamentals, all of those things. He does a really good job, has done it for a really long time. And then the rest of the coaching staff, obviously all of them phenomenal. Coaches have done it for a really long time. You can tell they've come in and really hit the ground running with that program. You can see their fingerprints all over it offensively. Coach Trickett has done a really good job with the quarterback. Arguably one of the best running backs in the country. I haven't seen them all, but definitely the ones we've seen. He will be a big challenge for us. The way Coach Trickett packages plays and runs and schemes together makes it difficult to kind of just own in on him because of the quarterback's mobility. Coach Williams on the defensive side, they do a lot, which makes it very difficult to kind of anticipate, hey, in this look or this formation, you're going to get X, Y, and Z. So the players got to be able to execute on the run. We got to do a great job in practice this week of giving them multiple looks. So it's going to be a challenge. Obviously defensively, they got a huge defensive line. Two guys on the edge that do a really good job getting after the quarterback and playing in the run game. I think their linebackers play extremely hard. And then their secondary with all the mechanics that they have on the back end are always in really good position. So we got some work cut out for us. It starts with a good Monday. We got to have a good Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and carry it into the arena. So with that, open up questions.
Well, Coach, just based from Saturday, what do you think that loss to kind of challenge the team, and how do you think it's going to get them to respond come this week?
Yeah, I think preparation is something that you really don't know. It's kind of like baking a cake, right? You get a cake and you eat it and it tastes good, but you don't know all the steps that went into making that cake taste good. And sometimes when you talk about preparation, it's all the steps. It's not just putting a cake, mixing the ingredients and throwing it in the oven. It's how long do you leave it in the oven? How long do you leave the ingredients in? How much sugar? How much whatever? So I think it gives us an understanding of truly what preparation really looks like and how you have to consistently prepare for the same every week. And again, I don't want to make it seem like we didn't prepare. There's just an intent and a focus that you have to do it with. You know, you can just put the cake in the oven, or you can make sure that the oven's preheated. You can make sure that it goes in for 18 minutes. You can make sure all of the little things. And I think that is probably what we learned the most from last week. And it's not just one side of the ball. It's not just players. It's everybody. And I think hopefully we've learned that the way we prepare Monday to Friday is going to be an exact replica of how we perform in the arena. That doesn't mean you're going to win, but it gives you a great chance to be able to perform consistent. The things we went back and looked at, the issues were all details. Well, details are the little things. Little things are what you talk about in preparation. Everything matters. So our leaders did a really good job. They got a stern message on Monday, so I think they heard it at least. We'll see if it works. But it was a good Monday to start with.
You speak to, Clint was with you for a while at the last place. Can you kind of speak to his, how he's evolved from since he was your guy to go with Clay Helton and making the move over to JSU?
Yeah, I think, again, the one thing that I think Coach Trickett does a really good job of, he's a former quarterback. So he sees the game holistically, meaning he doesn't just see pass concepts. He sees run concepts. He sees run blocking. He sees run deficiencies. He sees defensive deficiencies. He sees coverage. He sees pressure. And when you see it all, it helps you be more of a global play caller than just, hey, how can I get the ball to my receivers, or how can I run the ball? And I think you can see that as he's evolved, it's become even more detailed in putting the packages or formations together to hide deficiencies, attack weaknesses, strength and strengths. I think, can obviously with, Clay Helton and some of the things that they've been able to do at Georgia Southern, it's helped him evolve what he already has to be better. And I think, again, when you really look at how the game flows, you can tell it has a very strategic plan. Personnel groupings, packages, areas of the field, down and distance kind of philosophy, putting the players involved. You talk about players over plays. I think you can see that with the way the game flows. Obviously, there's player error, right? So I mean, some of the things you don't call for a negative yardage play or incomplete pass, but you can tell just by the flow of the game that he's got a really good global grasp of what he wants to do offensively with that group.
You see similarities in the way he wins it to the way he used Cam at Charles plays?
I think they're a little bit different. I think system-wise, they're similar. The system is similar, but I think they're a little bit different. I don't know Gavin as well as I knew Cam, so I don't know. As a coordinator, Clint's smart, right? You do what the quarterback feels comfortable doing, even if you want to run triple option and the quarterback doesn't feel comfortable doing it, then you don't do it. So, not knowing Gavin as well as I knew Cam, you can't really tell, what's he comfortable with, what's he like. Also, you look at all the pieces evolved. I think we're going to see things we haven't seen. Coach Trickett's really smart. Like, he's not just going to roll out the same game plan. Each week the game plan builds. So we're already 3 or 4 steps ahead on what are they going to try to do based on what they've shown. What are they going to try to do new? Because each week it builds, right? You don't just roll out the same game plan each week. So I think it has a lot to do with quarterback kind of preference. I think most coordinators will say, we try to get a system that the quarterback is comfortable with, and that can kind of direct it as he goes.
Going back to the preparation, I think Chris Jones said after the game that you kind of told them earlier in the week that you didn't think their preparation was good enough for that game. What are the things you look for, the little things that you saw last week that you thought in your head weren't good enough, and then you just said that yesterday's practice was probably the best. So what's the difference?
Yeah, you can tell. I mean, I've been blessed enough to do this 22 years. I can go stand in the middle of field practice and feel the energy, and it's not like if you come to practice, you would say, oh, they had a good practice. They caught every ball. They all seem to be going the right way. The practice was organized. But me standing there, I can tell when the pads clack, when the pads don't clack. I can tell by the level of communication. We're saying, down right, down right, down right. We say, down right! There's a difference. I can tell by the level, by the intensity. You can tell as the practice goes on, what is the flow and feel of how guys are moving. And it wasn't bad. And again, it's difficult to kind of see with a naked eye. You got to kind of know your team, and you got to kind of get a feel. yesterday, I mean, we were literally, I mean, there was like, it was almost a game yesterday. The communication, you know, the volume, the physicality, you know, the finish. You could just feel the difference. And as the week went on, I just felt more and more we were just practicing. Not bad, but we were just practicing. We were doing what we were coached to do and just kind of practicing. And I could just feel like, okay, guys, this is different than last week. And I tried to do a really good job of explaining to them. Sometimes it's hard to do. They're 18 to 22-year-olds, right? They think like we think, right? Well, we called every ball. We really didn't have any MAs. We didn't go the wrong way. But after the game, you can really kind of see, because that's how we played. Like, if you honestly, you've watched us long enough, we came out with a lot more intensity 2 weeks ago than we did Saturday. Saturday, we were just kind of there. You know what I mean? I'm not saying we played, you know, uninspired, but we were just kind of there. I thought as the game went on, we kind of picked up our intensity and it kind of got going, but you can't start slow in college football and think that you're going to be able to get it going. And that's kind of how the week was. The week was kind of like we went out, you know, just kind of, you know, everybody's checking the box, everybody's doing good, but there wasn't a lot of intent. There wasn't a lot of energy. There wasn't a lot of emphasis on things. And they knew it. They could see the difference. After you explain it to them, they could see the difference. The issue is, by the time you get to Wednesday, like, you can't go back to Monday and start over. So now you're trying to figure out, okay, how do we get prepared enough with what we have to try to play well enough to win? And I didn't think we were able to do that. What you saw was we have a good team, because in the second half we looked totally different. But now every catch, every point, every drive has got to end in a score, and that's tough. And that's what we weren't able to do, you know, kind of the second half. But we were in a better position. We were still moving the ball on offense. We were still stopping them on defense. But we weren't in a position to where every shot at the end zone mattered. Every possession mattered. And I think we learned from it.
A little bit off of that, y'all ate the turf up between the tens. Down in the low red zone, ability to get that hard yard. You kind of speak to that. I saw you went through a lot of balance at times and some heavy.
Yeah, there's a couple. I mean, there's a couple things. I mean, a lot of it has to do with defensive structure. I mean, you can pick any play on Madden, but you can't do that in real life. You know, defensive structure, areas you're trying to attack. Some of it's got to do with flow of the game. You know, I mean, sometimes you want to get bigger or heavier personnel. Sometimes you want to stay lighter. When we looked at the actual one that actually got inside the 5, we're too tight with our alignment. One of our linemen is in a 2-point stance. You never be in a 2-point stance if you're trying to go 6 yards. Our quarterback takes bad footwork. Our running back takes bad footwork. When I say bad, meaning rush, trying to, you know, get it in. So you look at it as a coach and say, obviously we haven't emphasized the details on this enough. Now, if you really think about it, that's the first time we've shown that package. That's the first time we've been inside the 5. The closest we got was Mississippi State, and we scored from the 5 or 4. So it go back as a coach and say, okay, well, we're investing time in practice, but are we investing enough time? There's a lot of other areas where we were actually better. I thought we were better on third down. You know, we did some things on third down that we hadn't been able to do. Well, we had a lot of third downs. So just looking at, you know, from a coaching standpoint, one, are we emphasizing inside the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 enough? And then 2, are we carrying enough variables? Because if we do get down there and we do have a problem, obviously not scoring is not an option. So making sure we're carrying enough to make sure we have some different answers when we get down there. And then ultimately making sure we're coaching well enough to make sure that the details matter. They really matter when you're talking 6 inches. So I think from a global standpoint, everyone had a little bit to do with it. Everyone kind of went back and said, okay, where can I, you know, from a head coaching position, do we need to put more time into the practice schedule into that area? Do we need to carry more play options into that area? Players-wise, are we playing the right guys in that area? Because that matters too. And then are we emphasizing the details enough to get what we want to execute?
You know, what do you think that maybe, I'm thinking about Carl Chester just kind of emerging in that receiver room. Some positives from that game that, you know, kind of spotlight the offense a little bit.
Yeah, I think, you know, and I love Carl. I think he's a byproduct of the system right now, and it's really good, and that's not a knock on Carl. Actually, in the meeting on Friday, it's been 2 games since he's caught a ball. You know, he had a big game against Mississippi State, caught some balls. Jackson State may have caught 1, maybe none. App State didn't really catch any, and then comes back and has a big day. And I told him not to kind of pick on him. I told him, as a receiver, when the ball comes to you, you got to make it count. You know, Doc, a week ago or 2 weeks ago, had a huge day. Well, gets injured in the other game. You know, he's out, so he didn't get the opportunity. So the byproduct of the system is what we have right now, and I think Carl does a good job of maximizing his opportunities. Smooth has done a good job of maximizing his opportunity. Braylon Brown's maximized his. And when you have that kind of variance, I think it helps the quarterback a little bit because you're not just looking for one guy. It helps the system because you trust that all of your guys can win or all of your guys can be successful if you just get through the coverage or the progression the right way. So Carl showed up in a big way. It happened to be him who had the day. It could be somebody else totally different on Saturday. And I think, again, the beauty of it is everybody's got to be ready. And I tell them, man, like, if I'm playing receiver in this offense, if I catch a ball, man, I'm doing a cartwheel, a backflip, I'm doing something because I don't know if I'm going to ever get another ball again. And that's not a knock. It's just I don't know if the ball will ever come to me again. So I'm going to try to make the most out of every opportunity. I'm not just going to catch it and fall down. I'm going to catch it and try to jump over 6 people and do a backflip because it may be 3 games, Carl Chester. It may be 3 games before that ball comes back to me again. So I want to make the most out of all opportunities.
So more of Robert Briggs as well. What do you think of what he did on Saturday?
Yeah, I think he's doing a really good job. You know, we kind of challenged the running backs after the first couple of weeks to run a little bit harder. I thought the first couple of weeks they were looking to hit the home runs instead of just putting their foot in the ground and going being physical. Briggs probably started doing that the most and started to break some tackles and started to get some yak yards. And then the rest of the room kind of followed. You know, at the beginning of the season, I thought we were trying to just hit the home run, right? I'm waiting and waiting, and I get tackled. Or instead of just putting my foot in the ground and trusting that I'm going to get, positive yards, they started doing that, and I think Briggs has done a really good job for his size of playing bigger than, his actual size may be, if that makes sense.
Coach, during the game, watching Braylon, obviously one of his greatest assets is his size, his physicality, his legs. Were there times when you thought maybe let's cut the wrist down and just tuck it, it's there for you?
Yeah, there were a couple. I mean, I don't have a joystick on the sideline. I know you guys think I do. I would love to just be able to go there, triangle, jump, with circle, spin. But again, there's a little bit of instinct to that too.
Yeah.
And I don't ever want to affect a player's instinct. He came to the sideline a couple of times. We talked Sunday after the game, and he was like, I probably could have just scored on the one I threw them at. I probably could have ran right in. Probably could have got a first down on a couple other ones. Again, I think it's a combination. When we don't do a good job as coaches of putting our guys in position to play, then the players feel like they have to press a little bit. Then every play gets magnified. If we're up 30-10, you guys are laughing about the goal line situation, but it's like, you guys are gonna fix it. Well, when you lose by 10, that's huge. When you lose by 10, the field goal that you miss in the first quarter or first half is huge. So I do think because of the way the game went, Braylon probably, again, you're the quarterback, probably felt like I got to press a little bit. I have to make this throw. And I think, again, when you're right, when you're close, like if it had been 30-0, there's no pressure, it's over. But when you're close, right, it's 10. If I just throw a touchdown pass here, we're back. You know what I mean? So a little bit of that same confidence and that same bravado that makes quarterbacks great, you also got to be able to tame that a little bit and say, hey, I just got to do my job. Here's an opportunity where I can check it down. Here's an opportunity where I can just run for the first down. I think that's a learning experience for him. But there were a couple, he was like, man, I should have just, but again, I don't think you can be a good quarterback if you are put in a situation where a coach is telling you run more, throw more. You got to kind of look at the situation. Obviously, we can call running plays if we wanted to run more. Hey, quarterback runs. But in those situations, because again, we would all be totally different if he throws that ball to Matt and it's a touchdown. Everybody's like, man, that's a great throw. Man, that Braxton's good, man. We'd be like, yeah. And I would probably still be like, well, he could have ran it. So I think a little bit instinct, but I think definitely learning. He came to the sideline and said, I probably could have ran there. So he acknowledged it, but I think that's part of the learning curve. Not necessarily when to run, when not to run, but understanding the flow of the game. I can't press. I still got to make my plays, still make my good decisions, let the game happen, not try to make it happen, if that makes sense.
Talk a little bit about the second half, what your defense is able to do. What do you think they can build on that from?
Yeah, I mean, I think we went back, it might have been like 20 yards we gave up in the second half. And if I explained our defense to you right now in 30 seconds, you'd be like, oh, that's easy. And literally, it was, we're playing man coverage. On the first play of the game, there's one player that has a tight end man. He's looking in the backfield. Tight end runs by. So we say, okay, let's put another guy on the tight end, make it a little bit easier. Another player has that tight end and man. He's looking in the backfield. He runs by. After that, everybody started doing their jobs. But on defense, you can play 80 plays phenomenal, and 2 plays be the difference. And just simple as eye violations. And that's not a point at the players. We got to do a better job of coaching, put them in, maybe moving them over their work a little bit, maybe moving them closer to their work a little bit, maybe taking some of the variables out of what their process or standard operating procedure, where my eyes go. We looked at all that, coaching wise. Are we coaching man coverage the right way? Are we giving our guys the best chance? But after those 2 plays, everybody really calmed down and started doing their job. But what you've done in those 2 plays is you've lit a fire on the other team momentum-wise. So now, yeah, they are playing with a lot more energy. They're playing with a lot more confidence. So it puts us in a little bit of a bind. But I thought defensively, we went into halftime. There was no quit. There was no everybody's upset with everybody. It was, hey, we got another half. Let's go out. And honestly, when I left the locker room, I felt like we were going to win the game. I felt like we were going to battle back defensively. We had settled down, made some adjustment coaching-wise, made some adjustments personnel-wise. Offensively, we felt like we had a good plan moving the ball. I felt like it was going to be one of those games that you barely win, and then you got to come back and convince the players that, hey, we shouldn't have been that close type of deal. But it didn't happen. We can still learn from it. But I think our defense has shown that when everybody settles down and everybody does their job, we can be pretty good. If you watch our whole season, it's been first 2-3 drives of every game have been a little bit looser than the rest of the game. Obviously, coaching-wise, we got to try to help put our players in better position those first 2 or 3 series. Players-wise, we have to settle a little bit. Part of the defensive mentality is to go hit. We got to settle a little bit. Coaching-wise, we got to settle our guys a little bit. But if we can continue to respond the way we've been responding, I think we're going to like the result.
Coach, you have a few key pieces out this week. How'd you come out of that game health-wise? How do you feel about that, and maybe getting a couple of those guys?
Yeah,
back this
man.
week?
Knock on wood, man. We've been blessed. BA and his staff have done a phenomenal job this off season. Obviously, it's week 4, week 5. So there's guys walking around with ice bags on shoulders and knees, but nobody that's out. Nobody that's not available. Obviously, we go through practice this week and see who plays. There's obviously guys who can play more or less or whatever, but we're in a really good spot. That's one of the beautiful things about a good nutrition plan, a good rehab plan, a good strength and conditioning plan. You got a chance to keep guys healthy now. Obviously there's injuries that happen in football. You break your arm. I don't know if that has to do with how much milk you drank or just the luck of the draw. But we've been blessed. So right now we're in a good spot. Obviously we'll monitor throughout the week, but we're in a good spot.
Anything else? Coach, thank you.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate everybody. Look forward to seeing you guys all in the Rock Saturday evening.
Appreciate it, Coach.
Thanks.